I have an update on the fringe. I have a quick update on the fringe events, which I believe they'll be communicating shortly, but I can share here because it's coming soon. So they are confirming the fringe event on the Friday and also one on the Tuesday. And it's likely that the Friday one are going to have parallel tracks. So they've got multiple rooms. So they're planning to offer and kind of curate 5 different tracks based on the 60 plus proposals that were put in that spreadsheet that I know you put into, David, as well. So that's what they're currently at, and they're going to have a kind of the final confirmation of what the tracks are early next week, and then they'll be kind of confirming or contacting people to see if how their session might fit into those tracks, and or potentially offering potential collaborations, for example, if 2 people are kind of suggesting a similar theme and how they might cooperate on a track and things like that. But that's the general plan and timeline.
Excellent. Thanks for that update. It's good to hear. Yeah, that filled up fast. It went from nobody filling it up to boom, like I think there's over 20 different things on there. So
over 60 when I went in.
Okay, it's filled up even more than when I last saw. Excellent. We'll have some fun, tough choices, I guess. Do you have any sense of, or does anybody have any? I feel like some people just like cut out early on those Fridays. I'm wondering if for my own personal planning, I'm wondering if I should plan to stay an extra night, or if it's okay to just leave at 5 or 4:30 or something like that.
Yeah, I think that the timings for the event are going to be, let me see, I've written it down here. It's going to be 10 to 5. So that's the timing for the event. And if they have a social, it'll be on the Thursday night. So I'm staying till Saturday because flights. But I'd say there'll probably be people heading off on Friday evening. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, I'll figure that out on my own. Maybe I'll stay and pal around with you.
Yes, do. We can go to a show. That's my plan.
Oh, cool.
But if you have a better suggestion, I'm open. That was only like if I was on my own EO.
Nope, nope. No plans. I'm just trying to figure it out. Oh, awesome, Angela. Are you gonna stay
You're gonna be
Friday
there on
night?
Friday night.
Oh,
amazing.
okay.
Because
right.
it's too
Okay.
hard to fly back to Texas, so on Friday night. So we're just gonna stay over. Both Alex and I will be in New York that night. So
Okay, awesome.
yeah.
We're getting a quorum. What and about the Tuesday, is that more than just a curious event? Is that
Sorry.
other events as well?
Yes. So on the Tuesday they're planning so on the Friday it'll be multiple tracks. And on the Tuesday, at the moment, it looks like it may just be one track, one big room, one track. So that's one of the things that they're looking through to see what kind of themes might like look for one single track big room versus breakouts into the 5 other tracks. So the Friday event will be in the PwC building, and I believe each of the rooms holds up to 60 people. So that's the kind of plan for that.
Okay. I guess I'm not quite getting it. So is the curious going to be part of that track, or is it going to be a separate thing?
No, so the curious is separate to all of the above.
Oh, okay.
So the curious event, yeah, that's not having to be scheduled. So all the other events are dependent on room availability, is my understanding.
And the Tuesday track then would overlap with the hackathon
and the curious event. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Cool. But the more events, the better. That's great.
It's going to be a busy week.
I think so. Yay. And do you have any updates on the hackathon? The last I checked 2 days ago, they still didn't have like specific problem statements. I guess they're still honing in on that.
I'll double check again to see if there's any more details, but I have not heard anything more in terms of communications on that.
Okay. Okay, great. Anybody else have any other thoughts or questions about the UN Open Source Week? Okay. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was climate triage and open sustain tech. So I got to meet with Tobias Augsburger. Richard Littauer has worked with him and connected us, and he's doing this really cool stuff with open sustain tech. He's been doing for many, many years. And I was excited to see he's already put together. The reason I was reaching out to him was related to this working group to see if he's put together a list of, I think it was over 3,000 open source projects that are specifically addressing climate action. And he has a really nice site. You can check it out, Open Sustain Tech. And it's broken down by different categories. And I was thinking this would be a great test case for us to implement some of the work that Remy was doing, where maybe we could walk through and say, okay, we know these are open source projects that are addressing climate action. Now, how easy would it be for a maintainer of each of those projects to just fill out a form or something, to have some JSON template be loaded into their project, so that then Jonathan and others could call APIs and search for that and have them hit as a open source UN-SDG 13 project. So that was the idea. And I haven't gotten to that next step. I think Remy's tool, we've had like some hackathon success where people have moved it forward a little bit, but it's still not quite at a space where we can launch it and use it, and have it do the work. So that's something that I need to talk with Remy and others about, actually getting some time to do. But I was excited to see this week that Open Sustain Tech is part of this climate triage project, and GitHub seems to be collaborating with them, which is really cool. So GitHub is doing a bunch of different things on this GitHub Climate Action Plan for developers, where they're trying to help developers understand the, I think, environmental impact of some of the tool choices that they have, which I think is really cool. I learned, I'm not sure when I learned this last year, that using dark mode is more energy efficient than using light mode, for example, and things like that, which seems trivial individually, but if every developer, every web user was using dark mode, it might make a difference. So anyway, just little things like that GitHub is bringing to developers' attention. And then they also put on that site that they have, I think, 60,000 open source projects that are addressing climate action. And I'm curious where they got that number, how they got that number, and how maybe there's another source of data that we can go to, like, start to figure out how we can align the work that we're doing, and make sure that those projects are getting our little code meta JSON or format files in them, so that we can all like align to that. Yes, these are 60,000 projects that are addressing climate action, for example. So anyway, I'm excited that GitHub and Open Sustain Tech are collaborating, and that they've gotten moved forward with this. So I think it's good news, and I just wanted to bring that up and kind of blubber my thoughts about a direction that this working group could go to try to impact that. Elizabeth, is that you at the community? What do you mean that they all correlate to a specific SDG?
Oh, so GitHub just has a list of all of those projects that like map directly to one of the SDGs. And so for people who are looking for a good first issue to contribute to, there's a list of projects. So if you have an open source project, you can have it listed on there. And you can also search by the goal that you're interested in working on.
Do you know how, are they doing that with tags, or do you know how they're doing that?
So there's somebody at in the social impact team Her name is Cynthia. I believe that she works closely with those projects. So like you let them know and then she adds you in, as far as I understand. I see Michael nodding his head, so I think that's the process. So I don't think it's tagged specifically. I think you have to like let them know and they will add you to the list.
So you like manually let a person at GitHub know?
I think so. I really do.
Okay. Okay.
That
That's a way
sounds
to work.
likely. I don't know that's for sure, but
Yeah, I don't either. I can actually find out because I do work with GitHub Social Impact Team on a separate project. So I can just ask them. I have a meeting right after this one actually with them today. So I'll just ask them and put it in the minutes here.
Yeah, fantastic. I would love to connect with them and ask, and figure out if how we can align our work so that we're supporting them, and they're supporting us, so that yeah, it can be official, transparent for everybody to see and
I would
understand their
imagine they're
process.
also interested in not having it forcing it to be something that, fully manual.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
If
I
that
think
could
that there's
scale.
only like 3 people on the social impact team anyway. So yeah, they're already struggling. Sorry, Claire, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, that was just in response to my, I think in response to my comment. So I just wanted to kind of highlight a challenge that I've seen happen with catalogs and lists. And it was brought to me when you said 60,000 climate projects, I nearly fainted, right? Because I mean, how on earth are you managed to go through 60,000 projects, even if they are classified by your problem and theme? If you even gave me 10, it'd be too much for me as a person looking for a project to be able to parse and decide which one is the most appropriate for my problem. So I'm just going to flag that I think there's a real problem at the moment with the discoverability of the right project to use and to contribute to for a given type of organization and an individual. So I'm just going to put that out as a big challenge, because I mean, I had the case of trying to get Irish government to use a project. I asked for some suggestions. People pointed me to another repository somewhere, said there's 600 options there. And I said, well, that's absolutely useless, because no one in the Irish government is going to look through 600 options. So, I'm just kind of highlighting that problem, that it's not just listing projects. We have to do something about intelligently being able to get the right one. So that's.
I could not agree more. My previous job, I did a lot of Elasticsearch work, and so worked directly on this, like the discoverability problem, when you have large sets of data. And Elasticsearch has some really nice capabilities where you can do faceted searches and filtered searches and all these things together. And so you can take a massive amount of data and filter it down. And sites like Amazon and all these other sites use these faceted search techniques. GitHub, I'm not aware of having that. Like, I think it's really hard to search for projects in GitHub. You kind of have to know what you're looking for. So I would love for them to add something like that. I'm hopeful that Jonathan and some of the other people that are working on that end of it are figuring out the tools to make it discoverable. But I think where we come in is having the data available so that when they do the API hits, they can have all those options for filtering and faceting, based on what's available in GitHub and what we add in the different configuration code, the JSON or the code metadata.
And I'm so sorry. Oh, sorry. No, I'm put up my hand. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Divya.
So I just wanted to add that most probably the way that GitHub list is being curated, the thing that Elizabeth posted, that thing is being curated, that website is being curated through a GitHub app. That's typically what these folks do. They ask the people to sort of install the application within their particular repository, and then I mean, obviously they go through the criteria and then they list it as specific to a particular DPG or a DPI. C4GT, one of the folks I patched you with, actually do the very same thing. They have a GitHub app which you need to install in your repository, and it'll sort of label based on the inputs that you give, what DPG, DPI is it specific to. I'd assume that they also go through a specific vetting process for the repos themselves, that there might be a requirement for human intervention, but the way that it's displayed is potentially through a GitHub app.
Awesome. That's good to know. Cassie?
Hi. Sorry, I had to join a little bit late. But it's sunny here, so I was like looking for a place outside. Yes, just sorry to like slightly change the topic, but wanted to share. Michael is CC'd in the email. I wanted to see if people had received the invite for the UN Open Source Week. The ones who had not received confirmation yet. So yeah, Omar came back from his vacation, and then he shared with me today in email that the people from the CHAOSS working group who I shared the list with should have received invite confirmation.
I don't know if we have any of those people online. It looks like there's about 5 that still have a no in the confirmation received category, but the rest of the 16 or 17 have a yes. So I guess 11 or 12. It looks like 12 people have gotten the confirmation, so that's great news.
Okay, then yeah, I honestly don't have capacity to go after the 5 people and then and go back and forth between Omar and Mitusa and these people at the moment. So I'll just take Omar's word as is that people should have received invite, and I just share the spreadsheet link as is with them. So if people add later, they can still see.
Yeah, I just added the spreadsheet link again, so I don't know if anybody from CHAOSS is able to. Oh, yeah, somebody's going in and changing them. So it looks like many people did receive it. We're dynamically updating. Now we're down to only 2 people that haven't received the confirmation. So good work, Omar and Cassie. Thank you.
I just wrote them, and it's really the Omar and Mitusa who does all the work in the back. So kudos to the small team doing a lot of work there.
Awesome. I'm excited that so many
yeah.
people are going to be able to attend. That's fantastic news.
So with that, over from my side, and Michael, I see your hands up.
Yeah, maybe this is a little random, kind of following up on various questions. And I won't get this in the right order, but specifically on metadata around DPGs, and I forget who asked that. I think maybe it was you, Claire. There is a set of metadata that's maintained by the DPG Alliance when they go through and review regularly projects that put in a request to be listed in their catalog. All of that is manually curated, but it is manually refreshed and updated, I think, annually in most cases. And I would cautiously say the canonical source of that information is in the DPG's catalog itself, although it's, and I say that because it's being extracted from other places, right? And so some of the answers may be, canonically stored elsewhere, but there's no other place, merging all of that into kind of one space to describe a digital public goods attributes as a digital public good per the DPG standard. But all of that goes to say, I think this is part of a larger kind of challenge that we have, and it's very closely related to this idea of the SDG impact as well. is this idea that we don't have a way to kind of federate this knowledge about projects in any meaningful way. And multiple people now talking about this idea of having multiple lists and understanding what the impact of something being, or what the meaning of something being listed on someone's list might be. There's a larger need for, I would say, some type of social capital score, or like, basically almost like a web of trust, but for projects, saying that, so-and-so has endorsed this or made some claim about a project that, for example, the DPG is making claims about projects that the projects meet their DPG standard. Other people may be making claims about projects like the WHO list of digital projects, that's saying that these are seen as high value for the health sector, or others, are making claims that are certain attestations about the projects, and there's no way to kind of synthesize that and roll it up into some meaningful meta-analysis, essentially. And I think that's something that's sorely missing. And it would be great if that could be done without, creating yet another copy of this knowledge, right? Somehow something is going out and spidering and crawling all of the various sources that are out there to try to understand that. On a related note, on the UN side, we are creating yet another list ourselves as well, to be hosted at opensource.un.org whenever that gets finally approved and launched. The list itself is actually going to be a soft fork of another platform. I was hoping I could actually find the staging installation of this thing on the UN domain, but I'm not finding it. But I'll drop in another link here in the chat, which is the version of the software that we'll be using. And I'm saying it's a software because we're customizing some of the workflow and obviously the UI and look and feel and branding and everything. But we'll be basically tracking. The initial plan is to track projects that the UN either creates or significantly contribute to. In other words, they're not necessarily UN projects, but they're UN adjacent projects. And again, like the fact that we're listing these is implicitly some attestation of the projects. I'm not saying it's necessarily quality, but it's saying that we are using them in some way, and it may or may not be clear in the data that we produce exactly why it's on the list. We hope that we get to that point. But anyway, all of that is to say that it would really behoove this larger community to try to get our act together on managing these lists and catalogs and resources in some coordinated way. I'm a big fan of distributed systems and federating the data to the extent that we can, because everybody's going to want to, always going to want to have their own views and lists and insights that they can add. But the ability to remix all of that is highly compelling to a lot of folks. So we need some standards to get to that point. We have a lot of the tools in place, but we definitely need to sort out some type of common approach of how we do that. And we've talked about some of that here, right, in terms of the SDG impact. So maybe that can be an impetus to push us more in that direction. Okay, my rant is over, but hopefully some of those things are interesting. The last one thing I'll add on my random list related to that open source week, I don't know if we've got the spreadsheet link here, but no, I don't think we do. I will drop in the current list of submitted talks for the Friday of open source week. Right now, it looks like there are 64 lines. This seems like this is going to have to get narrowed down, and I know the team, Eileen and Sashiko, are looking at this, but there should be more clarity on which sessions are accepted soon. They just closed it a couple days ago, and will be, prioritizing and trying to stratify the content as much as they can. So stay tuned, but you might want to bookmark that spreadsheet to keep an eye on things. All right. That's all for me. Back to maybe Jonathan. I think you're next in the queue.
Yeah. So we've got that attestation thing. I think I told you this. Told you about this at CHAOSS a couple years ago. I've been part of a group building this for the past 10 years, and we have the web of trust. We have attestations. We don't do it for SDGs right now. We do it for research and determining what is open, what has open data, what has open code, we use it for curating quality. So who says what is good and who trusts the sayer of that thing, right? I think I said that right. Can be toggled by a user, and then based on that toggle, they visualize the federated repository of all the data in a specific way. So it's a single repository that is distributed in nature. It could be federated, it could be fully distributed, and then it runs on a web of trust. So happy to show you how that works. It's getting to the point that it's starting to get adopted by institutions, or at least looked at by institutions. It's really exciting stuff.
Can you tell me more? I want to know how how a project joins that and how it might work or be transitioned to supporting SDGs.
Define project.
How
Like
a research project right now would be added to your list. Get the approval.
Is a research project software? Is it a methodology? Is it a data set?
Yes, tell me the requirements.
It has to be digital. It has to be a digital artifact. So you publish. I'm trying to figure out how to say this very quickly because I don't want to take an hour. It's a very robust system, so it takes a long time to explain. But essentially, you publish your digital artifact on an open repository that runs on something called Ceramic and something called IPFS. That artifact is given something we've created called DPID, a distributed permanent identifier that is infinitely scalable, essentially, free to mint and incredibly granular. Like you could mint a DPID for a single line of code or a single character in your code base, which I don't know why you do it, but you could. And once you publish that digital artifact, it is part of that distributed system at that point. And then a curation body, or the way we call these things in the legacy world publishers, but in this new world they're not gatekeepers, they're curators. So the curation body comes in and says, this digital art, there's a list of attestations that we've created, but also anyone can create an attestation whenever they want, and then anyone can use anyone else's attestation. But for this explanation, let's use the attestations we created, which were open data, open code, reproducible, big if true, that sort of thing. And you can see that these attestations were created by this entity called the DeSci Foundation. And if you go to that website, you see a very clear definition of what that attestation means and what artifacts might get them and how they might get them. Right, so you publish this digital artifact and you make a claim for one of these attestations. You go to the foundation's website and you say, hey, I think my data set applies or is open data based on this foundation's definition of open data. So I claim that attestation. That foundation, or whoever created that attestation, has a process for validating that attestation. And they go through that process, and either that claim is validated or that claim is rejected, or that claim is rejected with modifications that like you can do whatever you want, essentially. And if it's claimed accepted, then that digital artifact is now permanently tied to that attestation version number. These attestations change over time, but they'll say this digital artifact received this attestation on this date and this attestation version number. And I think that's it. I think I'll stop there. So all you need to do is publish on the platform. I'll put the platform in the website. or in the chat.
Cool. Thanks, Jonathan. Are you working with the Software Heritage Foundation and aligning with like their IDs and things?
No, but I keep meaning to reach out to them because we connected very, very briefly at FOSDEM, and they're like, "This is interesting." I just haven't had the time because I had a freaking bathroom to tile, among other things.
Because I think they just got a new ID approved. Maybe Claire remembers what it is.
Yeah, they got their software persistent identifier approved as an ISO standard now. And I'll note that Moran is going to speak about their planned OSPO radar project in the next CHAOSS meeting, so the university one that just follows this. And she's coming to the UN OSPOs for Good Week. So so there might be an opportunity to talk to her then, John.
Looking forward to it. Oh, I didn't answer your question, David, though. How do you make these relevant to SDGs? So this group, for example, could make an attestation that says fulfills or important for SDG number 12 or whatever. And then there you go. You just put that on the network and say anyone can claim this attestation. Whenever a claim comes in, you go through the validation process. And every other entity in the world or individual in the world can also make the important to SDG number 12 attestation, and anyone can claim anyone's attestation.
And that can be applied to a GitHub repo or any GitLab or any other repo?
Yep.
All right, make it so.
It's not, I mean, yeah, sure. It's not that difficult. We set one up for the Institute of Open Science Practices. If you go, I'll get you the direct link. So that's the events website. If you go to our gateway, this is our little journal, right? It's just me and my friend Ellie started this thing. And we have an attestation that says aligns with our values. And then people submitted their research. We got like 19 submissions to the event. And whenever they submit, we give them the attestation or we don't.
It's sort of like the CHAOSS badging idea.
It is.
Do you have a back and forth with them sometimes?
Not presently, but I've the CEO of the company who's building it, his name is Philip. I told Philip that would be amazing to have a chat function in there, and he said they'll build it. So hopefully at some point they'll be able to reach out to people who submit things, but there's not currently the way to do that.
Okay, I'd be willing to like take this on and try to make it happen for the SDGs. I don't really know what I'm committing to, but it sounds like at the very least something interesting to prototype and see how it could work.
If
Would
you go ahead.
Go ahead.
Ask your question instead.
Would it put some artifact into a repo, or is it just hosted?
So the way it works, if you want to use a GitHub repo, is so it's not built for software right now. So the way we would have to do it is mirror the repo over to the repository. But the functionality and that's really easy. You just put in the GitHub link, and it copies the whole repo over. So you'd have to do that every time the version of the software changes. But we're going to fix that. We're going to improve that because one of the things we want to do is fair software. We're doing fair data right now and open science validation. Fair software's on the roadmap. So it can't push back to the repo, to answer your question. It would essentially be creating a whole nother repository. But this is you mentioned you want GitHub to be a Commons owned entity. This is the version of GitHub that is Commons owned, because once software is on this, it can never be taken down, like never, and I mean never.
So that's what Software Heritage is doing as well, and Software Heritage is over top of GitHub and GitLab and Bitbucket and all the others, and it's a snapshot. It's a snapshot of a repo.
It's a little different.
Well, it's different because it's
similar.
focusing on software.
Yes, it's also a snapshot, which is different, and it's also still stored on a couple. It's currently stored on a single server. Like I could pour water on that server, and software heritage is broken. They want to federate it, is my understanding. In which case, I could pour water on 7 servers, and that software heritage is broken. This infrastructure is on hundreds of thousands of computers. It's impossible to take down. That's a big difference. The snapshot difference is another thing. So the way that the infrastructure that we built works is it's a living infrastructure. So it's meant to be built upon and used, not just as storage of a snapshot. That's my understanding of this.
Okay. I don't understand storage, how it's not a storage of a snapshot if it's gonna change every time there's a software change. But if it's gonna, but whatever. And it looks like in the chat, people are saying that there are software heritage does have some mirrors, but not the hundreds of thousands perhaps that your solution has. That's pretty cool.
Okay. If you want to explore it, what I could do is put together what something like this might look like and see how we could set up a little community on it that builds an attestation or two, and then start applying those attestations to software.
Yeah, what I don't want to do is have yet another place that has a list. I want to be building like a process so that this is a process or a standard that people can use. It's important to me that it either goes to some place like your server or software heritage or somewhere that is more of a space meant to store like persistent this persistent information, and that is also queryable via APIs or other things that anybody can access. So if it's somebody else's list on one server, then I'm not super excited about it. But if we're building a solution that anybody can use and depend on, then I am more excited about it. To query
Okay,
for, are these is this a project that is highly relevant to SDG 13, for example?
Yes, I think we need a separate conversation to dive into the nuances of list.
Okay, well, that was fun.
I don't think it's a list, but I'm not sure.
That was a fun deep dive for me. I hope other people enjoyed that ride. I actually would love to see a demo and talk to you maybe offline, Jonathan. Maybe we could have another conversation at some point. But I'll stop hogging the mic. Thank you for that, Jonathan. That was really cool. And Michael, I was really liking what you were saying as well. To get this conversation started about the web of trust, and yeah, still trying to navigate our space in this and how we define it, and add value and not duplicate what other people are doing. Yeah,
there's 2 dimensions, right? There's what's being claimed and who's making the claim are both worth knowing. Sometimes one is weighted more heavily than the other, but but as a consumer, if David recommends something to me versus some random person off the street, I put more trust into that, right? And so these are the same decisions that people are making when they're evaluating software to implement to solve a problem, right? Sometimes more formally and explicitly than others, but I think there's still a lot of people struggle with that, and there's basically something missing in the resources available that people are still struggling with. We hear people have gone out to the catalogs and they found 5 different things that they could adopt, but they have no clue on how to understand like what the demand signals are, like who's asking for what, like what are their peers looking at, what are the most popular? This is the case for all of open source, right? It's like, okay, there's a ton of alternatives out there. Which one should I really adopt? Like what's everybody using, and how do I figure that out? It's super manual of a process. So I think there's a lot of generalizability on if we solve this in this little niche domain, this could even extend out, much more broadly to other fields as well over time.
Well, I think we're in a really good home in CHAOSS in that we can maybe tackle just the SDG little piece. And CHAOSS meanwhile is doing so much work with the metrics to try to answer that bigger problem. How do you pick a project that's going to be here next year, that's going to be, updated and secure and yeah, and that's a bigger challenge. Henrietta.
Hello, just checking if you can hear me.
Yep.
Great. So I want to add to what was mentioned about who is making the claim and who is validating the claim. I think you mentioned it, David, in the latter part of your submission, to the duration, right, of how valid the claim is. And I'm saying this because I think I mentioned it here before that I had to go through some tech projects that were being funded by UNICEF at a point, and I realized that a number of them were no longer functional, or were not in place. The websites were down. There was no one to contact, etc. But on LinkedIn, some of them have still posted that, this is what we are doing and UNICEF is backing it. There was also another project on mental health that I was working on, and I contacted a founder who was being sponsored by World Bank, and then he tells me that, oh, it's not operational, the funding ended, and that was it. So I think that is important, because I'm sure the 600 and the 60,000, the billions of projects that are being listed on various websites, if we should go through, you realize that a number of them were either for just a particular period, or they are just not functional. And it's something that is coming up like very rampantly in my field of work. I don't know about the rest of you, but it's something that I've been experiencing. So I think that aspect, duration, should also be there. Another thing I wanted us to look at is, so we are in 2025, and then we have Agenda 2030 coming up. Agenda 2030 speaks to the SDGs, right? More like, quote unquote, the deadline for the SDGs. And more often than not in our conversations, we are looking at tagging projects, etc., using the SDGs. I'm not sure. I mean, UN has started, a sort of consultations, etc., to beyond the SDGs, whether they're going to extend it, whether there's going to be another framework, like the way we move from MDGs to SDGs, etc. So I think for longevity of whatever we are starting, we should also look at it, that if we're going to be tagging them with SDGs, and then in 2030, I mean, this is just longevity, just looking into the future, that whole framework changes. How are we going to retag all of them? What is going to happen? This is just looking into the future. So those are the two main points: duration, and then the tagging using the SDGs. Thank you.
Great points. Go ahead, Cassie.
Just wanted to say that, like, yeah, 1000% agree with Henrietta and making like really excellent points. So two, I'd say like issues with the current tags that people have in like more of a practitioner people, like in international development, is, so one is like what people call like SDG washing. So one is it's a project that actually doesn't run or doesn't exist, but then people, maybe it was at one point, and then it's there. And then another is, I would say, just like straight up not true claims. And then some are, yeah, and then there, like, a lot more social scientists had wrote about it. So if you search with like SDG washing, greenwashing, you find lots of research like on this, yeah, which had been done before. So that's like a bit of the one current issue. I don't know if it's something that we could resolve, And then on Michael's point on yeah, like who curates the resource, like what are the and what goes in there, I'll just share one drawing I did to explain this to other people at some point. Yeah, can you see my screen? Sorry, it's like my badly drawn like iPad thing. Yeah, so I was just like breaking down concepts, like what does digital public good mean? And then saying that this is not synonymous to Digital Public Goods Alliance approved digital public goods. Like DPG by definition is like much larger. And then like the open source projects are much larger. And then DPI might or might not be open source. And then yeah, this was like specific to brainstorm certain group of people on what's humanitarian digital public infrastructure like, or what should it be, like what kind of investment and what are these things and such. So I think that's also important, like that I would like really emphasize DPGA is not DPG, or that's not the only thing. It's a subset of DPGs. So there's like that metric and such, but it's not like sort of the set in stone, I would argue. And yeah, so just like 2 points, like who curates it and does existing curated list do it? Is this comprehensive? Like, do we trust the questions that they ask basically and the metrics that they have pulled? Yeah, so it's all to say that I 1000% agree with Henrietta in a more like practical perspective in like what goes on in the reality and what we have seen. And then another is you know, there's million lists, but not all these lists like sort of meet the needs of people out there. So if there is a new list that does meet the needs of people, I don't see any reason why it shouldn't there, while the very strong demand is there.
Thanks, Cassie.
That's it. Yes.
Thanks, everyone. We're at time. I think again we have more questions than answers, but I'm strangely optimistic that we can move the needle forward and do a lot of good with all the brains that are contributing here. So thank you, everybody. I look forward to meeting again in a couple of weeks, and yeah, I think we're making progress, jumping back and forth and kind of getting these ideas in our heads and understanding all the different facets. So thank you all. I look forward to our next meeting.
Agreed. Thanks, everyone. Cheers.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.